What happens when somebody turns the conversation in a way that you don't want it to go? Whether it's a vendor or a customer or a family member or a friend, do you have the ability to turn that back to the conversation that you want to have? If not, today's podcast is for you. I am on today with Becca Brown from SoleMates, and she has amazing things to say. As a matter of fact, she was formally trained in how to turn her conversation to back to the message that she wants to have, all in preparation for Shark Tank. You don't want to miss this. Check it out. Hey, Becca, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Hey Joe, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I am so excited to talk to you. Your episode was actually one that I watched as I was preparing for Shark Tank, and so I watched it again, to prepare to talk to you today, and I was just like, man, I don't know, you guys just. I loved some of the things, and we'll talk about them later. But at the end, you ignored Mr. Wonderful. Like you just like you guys kind of shot him down, didn't even talk to him anymore as you were making your deal with Robert. So I was like, kudos to you guys. That was amazing.
Oh, oh, thank you. Well, as you know, it's a very intense experience, but it was really awesome for us. So,
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your product. I have three girls. I have three daughters, and I can tell you, based off of everything that I hear, your product is genius. So I will never
Aw.
experience it, hopefully, but from what I've heard, your product is genius. So
Aw.
share with us a little bit what it is.
I would love to. So I'm the co-founder of SoleMates, and we make shoe and foot care products. And our flagship product, which you're referencing, is a patented high heel protector that attaches to a high heel and prevents it from sinking into grass. So as a woman, we've all been there. At my high school prom was my first experience sinking into the grass, or a wedding or a party, and the high heel just goes right into the ground. And I was frustrated and tired of ruining my heels. So I decided to invent a solution. And all it is a little piece of plastic that goes on your heel and increases the surface area on the base of the heel so you don't sink. It's a physics equation that we're increasing the surface area. So it's very simple, but there was no solution. So we set out to create it, and so was born Soulmates.
And you and your partner actually left the financial sector to go into this entrepreneurial journey that you're now on. How was that decision? Like that seems like it would be. You guys left good jobs, right?
We did, yeah. So my partner Monica and I, we both had worked at Goldman Sachs, and we just by coincidence had gone to Columbia Business School, and that's when I first told Monica about this idea, and we were both planning to go back to Goldman Sachs, which we did, and we worked on Soulmates as a project on the side, and it was a very important decision. I think having each other and the fact that we were working at the same company and we were going to leave together to pursue it made the decision a little bit easier, but we took it very seriously. We had full support of our colleagues when we did ultimately decide to resign and pursue Soulmates. But that's the most meaningful decision that you have to make as an entrepreneur, unless you can continue to have your business as a side hustle, which some people do. But we knew we needed to devote 100% of our time and energy to getting this off the ground. So looking back on it, of course we were going to do it at the time. It took a lot of deliberating and figuring out the timing of it, but in the end, it was worth it.
I had this visual as you're talking of the two of you standing on the edge of the cliff, about to jump into the ocean. And grabbing hands and jumping in, and
Yeah.
which is a lot easier. For people that are on this journey or want to go on this entrepreneurial journey, it is so much easier to do it with somebody than to do it alone. Because when you're on the edge of the cliff about to jump in by yourself, I don't know. It's a different feeling.
Yeah.
And having good
It's so
partners
true.
is really important. Making sure that you're holding on to the right person's hand as you jump off that cliff is really important.
So important. And I think that's why we were able to do it together. We both had the same background. We were, knew what, well, we didn't know what we were getting into. You can never know what you're getting into as an entrepreneur, but we knew what we were wanting to do and we were focused on that. And I've heard of other partnerships where one person resigns from their job and they're kind of doing the entrepreneurial thing. The other person is still holding on. And it doesn't work a lot of times because you're not at the same sort of positioning with your respect to the business. And for us, we were aligned completely, so it did make that a little bit easier. no joke though, our friends and family, I mean, they thought we were crazy. They're like, "When you're leaving a good job to start a business around a heel protector? What?" But that's where I think one thing that we really did was lean into our other entrepreneurs that we knew who had built successful companies, and that became our network of supporters and people that we went to not only for advice on the practicalities of getting a business off the ground, but just that emotional and psychological support of like, yes, you can do this, you're on the right path, because there were a lot of other naysayers at the time, which is normal.
Yeah. So you guys jump off this cliff. You guys are now in the heel protecting business, in that industry, which is primarily, again, from looking at watching the show, weddings. You're selling to bridal shops and hotels and things like that. How did that did How much help did you get to start that? Because when you were on the show, you had like 3,000 retail doors that you guys were in, something along those
Yeah.
lines. That's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. And just to clarify, when we went on Shark Tank, we had already been in business for a few years.
Mhm.
So, we were further along. I know they bring on entrepreneurs at different stages in their businesses, and we had been around for a few years. So we had achieved, yeah, that good distribution that you mentioned. But the early days was cold calling. I mean, we had no contacts in the industry. We had no retail experience. We had no manufacturing experience. We had really no consumer marketing experience. And it was all learning as we went. And even though we had our MBAs, the reality is you learn it by doing. You just
Mhm.
get out there and you hit the pavement, and that's what I would do. I mean, I would walk to wedding shops in Manhattan and shoe repair shops and literally pitch the product. I got turned away by a lot of people, but then I started to get a few yeses, and people were willing to place those orders. And you just have to keep at it. And then we were also reaching out to press and trying to get editors to take notice. And because this problem of sinking into the grass was so prevalent and most women had experienced it, we found that when we were able to get the right contact at, let's say, a magazine, chances are the woman editor would know this problem and would want to actually write about the solution, because it was that feeling of finally there's a solution. So we benefited from a lot of organic, authentic press. And I think that also helped with the sales as we were getting things started, because a lot of retailers don't want to take a flyer on an unknown product or brand. But when they see that you've been featured in Oprah, then it's a little less risky.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the and we'll talk about your episode here in a minute, but one of the um, surprising things about your episode was Lori not jumping on, and that blew me away because to me this is a QVC, like almost in a lot of ways. And again, I don't mean to. I hope that doesn't come across as an insult or anything like that. But this almost seems like a made for QVC type of product where it goes on and people go, "Yeah, I had that problem. Let me, put my credit card in and have that so that when this happens next, I'm prepared." It just seems like one of those like almost I don't want to say emotional type of things, but it's almost like that. To your point, most women have had this experience, and they know that they need this product if they don't want to have that experience again. So,
Yeah.
like I said, it was just surprising to me.
We were surprised, and I think it was by design. I think that I went into the tank expecting that Lori would be interested because she is a woman, she wears high heels on the show,
Right.
obviously, there's a natural kind of, affinity there, but, she was the first to bow out, and I think that it was maybe orchestrated. I don't know, I haven't spoken with Lori since that day, but I was a little surprised, but at the same time, that's okay,
Sure.
and, the other sharks obviously had interest. Um, but yeah.
So all right, so you guys are having some retail success, um, and Shark Tank, comes around it. So, did you guys go to a cattle call or put an application in, or what?
It's a funny story. So I mentioned that Monica and I went to Columbia Business School, and actually the first audition we did for Shark Tank was through Columbia Business School. It was like invited, the producers were on the campus, and I think there were maybe 30 or 40 alumni founded ventures pitching, and we got through the first round, and the second round was to submit an audition video.
Mhm.
We blew it. We totally misinterpreted the point of that video. We scripted it, we had a producer, we had lighting, like we were so like stoic, and we had no personality in it, and we didn't get asked to come out to LA. So we ended up, the first time around, we didn't make it, and, like, a year later, we'd be getting all these other, requests from different shows asking us to audition, and we thought, "You know what? Why don't we just reach out to Shark Tank and maybe they'll give us another shot?" And they did, and so we submitted another video that was 100 times better. I mean, it was literally us, like, talking about how excited we were about building soulmates, and it was our friend taking the video, so it was really natural and authentic, and that's what they wanted, and we overthought it the first time around, and thankfully we figured it out second time, and they brought us on. But I think that's an important lesson too. When you're an entrepreneur, you have to be authentic.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, that's the only thing that really matters. And so that's how we got on. It was a long road, but we made it.
Yeah, it's funny because again, I've had a chance to talk to a lot of Shark Tank entrepreneurs, and you know, some people have the story of like, hey, they wanted an audition video, so I had my 8-year-old standing there with the my phone, just shooting something, and and then here you guys, and they get on the show, and then you
Right.
guys, go, way overproduced or way overthought and didn't, and
Yeah.
you're right, it is a authenticity and personality, especially
Yes.
for startups. A lot of times people might not be 100% sold on your product because it hasn't been out there. Again, you guys created a new category,
Yeah.
but if they're sold on you, that certainly helps.
Right.
Whether you're calling on a bridal shop or a shoe repair place or the Shark Tank producers, they want to trust you, um, first and foremost.
100%.
So
100%.
all right, so you make it on this show. You come down, you guys do your thing. First of all, having all the sharks in heels, other than Mark Cuban, who is way too cool to put on
Yeah.
high heels, I thought that was genius. I thought that was great TV. So I don't know if you
Thank
guys
you.
planned that or if it was just you're like, man, I hope one of the guys does it. Like
We we did plan it, and I would encourage any of the listeners to check it out on YouTube because it's a great TV moment
it
having
is.
the sharks in heels. But we did plan it in advance, and we got the shoe sizes of all the sharks, including all of the men. And I'll tell you, it's very hard to find like size 42 high heels, or what? Maybe it was 52. I don't even remember, but it's very hard to find that size. But what we did was we had a pair of heels for each of the sharks, and one of the shoes had the heel protector on it, and the other didn't. And the art department built this incredible grass plot on our set, and so we invited the sharks to come and experience the difference. And every one of them, except for Mark Cuban, came up and experienced the amazing difference when you wear Soulmates on your high heels. So that was a great TV moment. It was so much fun. I think Robert and Kevin sort of pranced around a little bit more in the heels. But we couldn't get Mark to come up there. We couldn't do it.
Yeah, he almost, and again, I know it's TV, you know what I mean? So he almost has this like disgusted look on his face that the other guys are doing it. It was just
Yeah.
um so again, it's that made good TV, but
Yeah.
I thought that was fantastic. And we kind of alluded to this a little bit during our conversation. Some of the sharks were out. You know, uh, your valuation based off your profit, and this is where I got stung too. Like we were very similar to you guys. We had been in business for several years. We were much bigger than most Shark Tank companies were. We were doing, that I think that year we did 10 million in sales or something like that, with $40,000 of net profits. Every single one of them knows what goes into growing a business. So
Right.
the drama of you guys only having a small percentage of net profits or us having one, the TV makes it big, but it's not to anybody that's growing a business. Everybody knows that you're reinvesting,
Right.
constantly, and
Right.
so, but I mean, were you shocked by their reaction to your valuation and your profitability? Um,
Not really. I had been a fan of the show for many years, and I knew more or less the formula, and I knew that it was going to be tough, and we were very well prepared. When we spent months, and we knew everything that we wanted to convey. But I mean, I knew they were going to try to trip us up. I think they edited it in such a way that makes it appear as though we were kind of a little bit, clumsy with our responses to things, and it was actually a really good part of the conversation. But I think the editors want to portray, those trip up moments or those sort of
Absolutely.
tense moments, and they did that. But I think that, yeah, to your point, if you're growing a business, everything you're doing is reinvesting into the business to continue to grow even further. So I think that it came across in a way that they were trying to stump us, but I didn't feel it at the time. I felt like, no, I'm just trying to make sure they know the facts and just make sure they know
Right.
what we're doing. And one thing I'll say this too, we were not able to talk about our other product line. Like, so we have the heel protector is the flagship product, but we make a whole line of other shoe and foot care products, from blister blocker balms to deodorizing sprays to insoles. And we couldn't talk about that for, I guess the legal team only vets like one of the products and intellectual property on that. So we couldn't
Hmm.
really bring in those other products. But that's a key part of the financials, because part of why we didn't have a higher profit margins, because we were developing new products for the brand. And so that's one thing that didn't make it through to the edited segment. But in the end, I'm happy with how things worked out. But yeah, that was the point when they were trying to trip us up and make us sort of flustered.
Yeah, and one of the things for the people that are listening, one of the things that there's not a lot of transparency. They're making a TV show, so all of the financial stuff, all of the justification for profits or lack of profits, all those, it ends up on the cutting room floor because it's not exciting, it's not
Right.
sexy. It's just it's boring stuff that you have to go through. Whether you're pitching to the Sharks or another VC or something like that. But it's nobody wants to sit there and listen to that or watch it on prime times. So,
Right.
um, but
Right.
so you go through all this stuff. They try to trip you up, and you end up with Robert starting the ball rolling with an offer.
Yes.
How exciting is that though? Like when you get through all of that, and they're like, even though he prefaced it with "You're not going to like my offer," uh, but still, like the fact that you're getting an offer, you're like, wow, like
Yeah.
I'm on the 1 yard line here now, just for a
Yeah.
sports reference there. I mean,
Love the reference.
yeah.
That's so true. That's what it feels like. It's so exciting because going into it, you are conditioned by all the producers to say there's no guarantee you're going to air, things fall through the cracks, only so many people make the season. There are all these sort of negatives like in your mind that there's a very slim chance that I'll get on the show or that I'll even get an offer. So when I first heard Robert say those words, I was so excited. I didn't know what he would say next, but I was so excited. And he did end up giving us an offer, as you know, and so did Kevin. And it was great. I mean, it was exhilarating because you spend all this time preparing for this very moment,
Hmm.
and then it happens.
So how much? Speaking of preparation, and so we'll get into some of the lessons that we've learned through this. But speaking of preparation, how much time did you actually? Because you guys were well prepared. Like I could tell, there are the people that prepare for Shark Tank, and then there are the people that don't. And it's
Yeah.
very obvious. I mean, you guys were well prepared, well spoken. How much time did you take preparing for your segment?
Quite a bit. We had, I would say there are like three main things. So the first one is, you're scheduled to do these sort of weekly calls with producers leading up to when you have an audition, which we were doing that and refining our pitch and things like that. But the other two were what we took on. So the first one, or I guess the second one, is that we decided to do formal media training, which we had never done before. And we
Interesting.
had been on podcasts and television shows and things like that, but we had never formally we invested the money. We spent a day with a professional media trainer in Manhattan, and we did media training, and it was so helpful because it gave us a game plan. And there's this great saying, confidence is a known outcome. And in order to get confidence, you have to know what you're going to try to convey or what you want to say. And so it helped us put together that game plan of what we were going to say and try to convey, knowing that the show was going to be highly edited. And so that really gave me a lot of confidence. And then the third thing that we did was rapid fire Q&A with our office, our team. So we would go into our conference room and have our staff, our interns just pepper us with every question possible. And we would do this a couple days a week just so that we could get really sharp and really think quickly on our feet. And it would give us time to kind of think how we're going to answer questions together. And we did that for months leading up to it. And I think those really really paid off in the end, because when we got out there, of course we were nervous. Of course there were things that came up that were out of our control, but we knew that we had those things nailed down, and we were going to go out there and show everything we had. So
And you and I were talking about this, before we started the podcast, but that confidence and that preparation translates into, as an entrepreneur, as a business person, translates into every single aspect of the business, especially when you're when you're dealing with, whether it's customers or suppliers or investors, whatever the case may be, having that confidence because you have either practiced these things in your mind or you can bring them to a point that you want them to go and keep bringing them back
Yeah.
to the direction that you want to take conversations, you want to take meetings, things like that.
Yes.
I assume that that's a lot of what your media. I love the fact that you guys did media training. You're the first person that I've talked to that had um, made that investment to do that. Is that one of the things that they taught you in that training was have a message and keep coming back to it?
Yeah, essentially that's it. And a friend of ours who was in media, she suggested it, and it was not cheap, and it was a hard decision to make. Because obviously, as a small business, you don't have a budget for things like that usually. But we decided to do it, and it was worth it. So yes, that is exactly the kind of tactic that we were told in the training is that to be mindful of your audience and who you're speaking with, but also to have the key points that you want to convey. And whichever way the conversation goes, answer the questions, of course, engage in the conversation, but try to bring it back to those key points because, and it was kind of specific to the Shark Tank show because we knew that there's footage that ends on the cutting room floor. And we wanted to make sure that we had some key points that got into the edited version. So I think with each question we answered, we tried to kind of weave it back to one of those key points so that we were increasing the chances that those points would end up in the edited segment. Because we were on the set for almost 2 hours, as I think you were,
Hmm.
and then you get edited down to, like, 8 minutes or something like that. So, we just wanted to increase the chances that those important things about our brand, about SoleMates that we wanted our customers and the audience to know, increase the chances that those would make it into the 8 minutes.
And that is a skill. I mean, that is a skill. Again, if you're dealing with a vendor that is letting you down for whatever reason, bringing them back to like, hey, you have to get this fixed, but let me talk to you about the opportunity that we have together, and or
Mhm.
a customer that maybe you're letting down with, especially through all of the COVID stuff, all the stuff that we're dealing with
Oh,
the
yeah.
supply chain. Um, Making sure that your message stays on point is really really key.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you guys are seeing that as well, right?
Yeah, and I think, the first thing you have to do is know what the message is, and that's been hard in
Good point.
COVID because a lot of us haven't known what the message is. I mean, even this was uncharted territory for all of us. So, businesses and people individually. So, knowing your message is kind of half the battle. You have to figure out what the message is, and then figure out how you're going to communicate that. And then, if it's very important, and make sure that you keep reinforcing it as best you can.
Yeah. So, man, th- I'm just I have so many directions that we can go. We only have a couple more minutes here, but uh, how are things going for you guys? I mean, one of the things that COVID has taught us, this last year and a half, almost 2 years now, has taught us is that pivoting is important. Changing tactics is important. Um, you know. Uh, Even with your industry, you guys probably almost had a little. There's been a little bit of a hiatus with you know, the reasons that women wear heels.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
um,
Oh, yeah.
how have you guys adapted through this time?
Yeah, it's been tough, but we've adapted, which is good, and that's I think testament to the business and the breadth of products we have. But one of the first things we did, it's a very interesting story actually. In the spring of 2020, April 2020, we started getting emails and messages from nurses and frontline healthcare workers who are getting mask face chafing from wearing the N95s
Oh,
on their faces constantly, and they were asking if they could use our blister blocker, which is a natural anti-friction balm, on their faces. And they could because it's all natural, has no chemicals, no
oh,
toxic
wow.
ingredients. So we were getting these inquiries like very frequently. And we thought, you know what, we are going to mobilize our customer base and we're going to put together a donation program so we can donate this product to frontline healthcare workers. And we did. We launched a buy one, give one, and we got thousands and thousands and thousands of people to buy so that we could donate to dozens of hospitals around the country. And it was this overnight decision that we just did it, and the response from our customer base was phenomenal. And so that's something, and we've continued to do that throughout the pandemic. And that was something that we never could have imagined, and it came to us in an authentic, organic way. And one of the first deliveries I actually made in person to some nurses up in a hospital in New York, Mount Sinai. And I was like basically crying when I gave them the samples. I mean, we had to kind of like drop it on the corner so that they could get them. Everyone had the masks and everything on. But it was such an intense time, and they truly were putting their lives on the line for all of us. And so this was a little tiny thing we could do to help make their day a little bit easier. But we felt that it was significant that we could play a part. And then we also started doing small business spotlights on our blog. We work with a lot of independent retailers like wedding shops and shoe stores and things like that. And so we started a program where we were featuring them on our social media and on our blog, trying to make sure that we could support the small business community. We also have a deodorizing spray that eliminates odor in shoes and bags and things like that. And so that became a popular product because it prevents the spread of bacteria. So it's a natural product for people to be using in COVID. So we really did shift the focus. And then as we started to see in 2021, people, there are planning their weddings now or having weddings. And so we did start to see a resurgence of the need for the high heel protectors. But it was fortunate that we had other products to kind of bring into the center, so to speak. But yeah, it was challenging.
And there's a lesson there. I mean, if you're a kind of a one trick pony, I sell window screens. I'm kind of a one trick pony. You live and die by the popularity of your product or the needs of whatever you're doing. And yeah, I mean, with the weddings being canceled, if you guys only had the heel protector, you could have gone out of business.
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely
diversification
could have.
is certainly key. One of the keys, of that the world is teaching us right now.
Yes, yes. The good news is our products are made in the USA, so we have had some disruptions to operations, but nothing like I've heard horror stories of other brands that have, inventory on a container ship or hasn't even left the port, and it's just it's devastating. And thankfully we have not been in that position.
So I have to imagine that I know one of the people in our office had postponed their wedding. They're supposed to get married last year. Now they're getting married this coming year, and I have to imagine you guys are starting to prepare for all of this demand that has been building up.
Yes, we
And
are. We are. And it's interesting because in 2020, a lot of the customers that we were working with had said, what we're putting, whether it's a wedding planner or an individual customer planning a wedding, we got a lot of messages saying, hey, I'm delaying until 2021. And some people have delayed even further. So initially we thought 2021 was going to be this big breakout year and all the weddings would come back. But as we know, it's been, slow kind of climbing out of the pandemic. So now it's more the 2022 where people feel like it'll be normalized. And I think it's estimated upwards of 3 million weddings are due to take place
wow,
over the next year. So yeah, it's going to be the biggest on record, I think. And we're ready to go. We're ready with products for everybody.
that's fantastic. Well, I wish you guys the best. How can we find your product? Find out more information, stuff like that.
Yeah, so we're online SoleMates, and I should spell it. It's SoleMates because sometimes people spell it other ways. So SoleMates, thesoulmates.com, at the SoleMates on social. You can Google SoleMates and it should come up. You can always feel free to reach out to us, and we love hearing from customers and supporters and other entrepreneurs. So please don't be a stranger.
That's fantastic. And if you want to watch the episode, season 8, episode 4 on Hulu, I'm telling you, you guys, if you're listening to this, watching this, you have to go watch that episode. It is very entertaining. So, well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I have a feeling that we might have to do this again because you're a wealth of information, and I think that we can glean more out of you here in the future. So, but thank you so much for your time today, and I hope that everybody got some amazing advice through this.
Oh, thank you, Joe. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I would love that. Let's do it again.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Lessons from the Tank. If you got value from today's podcast, we encourage you to subscribe to the podcast so you're notified when a new episode is posted. If you'd like to support our podcast, we encourage you to review it and share it with a friend. Thank you, and we'll see you on the next episode.